Hello everyone, and welcome to Stardate 20x6 Map 2 in green. Now regarding the palette, I did more than just change the color this time. First I made it green and then I increased the vibrancy of the green, so the green looks better now. However, this beginning, you usually want to kill the pain elemental first and then the revenants. And from that point you can walk up those stairs and start killing all the imps. Be careful of that window to the right, because there's an archvile beyond that window. Once all the imps are dead, I'm going to kill it. And there you see, out of the corner of the screen, there it is. As long as you know where cover is, you should be perfectly fine when dealing with this. Just don't get caught up on anything. Behind this area are these two revenants. Make sure not to poke out too much or else you'll alert the shotgunners, which are also there. Here's a secret for a soul sphere. Usually at the beginning of this section, you're gonna have less than 100 health, so you can pretty much always get it. It's not the best to catch Hell Knight projectiles, though. I think the best way to complete this area is get the Incubus to infight with some of the Hell Knights, and then kill the imps. After this, we've got the first, I guess, set piece of the map, unless you consider the start a set piece. A bunch of imps teleport in, as well as two revenants. Just make sure you don't get surrounded. If you're paying attention, you can sometimes cut through the imps with the super shotgun. But if you're not paying attention, then you'll get surrounded and lose a bunch of health. And health isn't something you want to lose in this map, because there isn't a lot of it. There's usually enough to cover for your mistakes, but not always. Inside these bars, we've got a bunch of barons. It's best to stay to one side, and then fire upon them from there. That way you won't have any problem with grouping them up together. You can be more efficient with your rockets. And then you can kill them all. Although it's usually best to keep some rockets for later areas. This place right here is actually quite well constructed for what it is. Pretty much all of the enemies can damage you in some way if you're screwing around, or sometimes even if you're not. They're placed in a way to sort of surround the arena, so they're shooting at you from most of the sides possible. If you can get them to infight, then you can get them to die. I wouldn't want to kill them all myself because I want super shotgun ammo for the next area. You've got to face some enemies which are best faced with more weapons. Now about the map itself. This is one of Ribik's first maps that uses his signature curvy architecture for areas, natural environments. I think that's interesting because it sort of became a theme later in Sunlust and beyond a little bit. These enemies don't like to cooperate because the Revenant is on a high shelf and it's difficult to get a good angle for it. As long as you don't go too far around the corner, this Archvile shouldn't be much of a problem. You should also keep him from moving too far ahead, or else you'll have no cover yourself. These imps serve practically no threat. They're just fodder enemies that are there to be killed. This next area is the first one where death is actually quite possible, but it's a lot easier than it looks. It's one of those arenas that feels difficult, but it's not as difficult as it feels and looks. You just have to circle around and plasma whenever you're in trouble. It's another one where you just want to not get surrounded. As long as you can manage that, you shouldn't take too much damage. Although, I would usually take more damage than is necessary here. It's best to try and keep as much of the Megasphere health as possible, because in a room that's going to be not much further on from here, you need health in order to survive, and it's best if you have more than 100. There's a bunch of chain gunners, you'll see. Essentially how this room works on a mechanical perspective, though, is that there's a bunch of teleporters in the center of the room, and when enemies walk on those teleporters, not you, they don't work for you, it teleports them to the outside of the arena. This creates an interesting dynamic, because it means that circle strafing brings everything in, which immediately forces them out. I wouldn't use rockets in this arena, because of all the teleporting enemies, or at least I wouldn't use them much. Maybe when there's just a few enemies left, and they're already on the outside. Other than that, no real reason to. That switch releases all these guys, and these guys should never kill you. They're pretty much just more enemies for you to kill. It's an ambush. This is a pretty well hidden secret. And here's all the chain gunners. As you can see, they did quite a lot of damage to me very quickly. If I had less health than 150, then I probably would have died. While we wait for me to kill all these barons, I'll talk about the color palettes. I think that the green actually works very well in this map, alongside the brown. I think green and brown are very good colors together. They work very well. Now we have the fight of the map that has killed me the most consistently. I like running over here, hiding behind, so I can lure the Cyber Demon over more safely. I don't want to go on the other side yet because the Cyber Demon still has a line of sight over there, and I don't want that to be true. If I can kill the Archviles, then I've got a good chance of beating this fight. But if I can't, or I catch a Cyber Demon rocket, which has happened more than once here, then I'll die. So I just have to make sure I don't. However, once I reach this point in which the Archviles are dead, you shouldn't die very much. It's probably not going to be much of a problem, unless you, like me one time, screw up ridiculously terribly and get yourself impaled on a rocket. Another thing, it's best if you get the Cyber Demon to kill all of the Hell Knights from this side, because if it's from the other side, then you can't do anything. And what I mean by you can't do anything is that an Archvile is going to be spawned over there. So you don't want him to resurrect everything that's just been killed. It's a waste of ammunition. Now that's an unusual thing. Usually the Cyber Demon kills all of the Hell Knights, but this time that was not the case. It doesn't really matter though. You can just kill them in his stead, with the same method as well. Over here you can be shot at by chain gunners behind you. It's best to kill them as early as you can, so that they don't impact you later. In this situation, I'd wait for the Archvile to target you, because otherwise you're going to be wasting a bunch of rockets, probably. If you can get everything to infight here, then there should be no problems. But if you don't get everything to infight, then you're just going to lose a bit of ammunition. And while that's annoying, it's better than taking a bunch of damage. Which is another thing possible in this area if you don't be careful. Now we're back to this area. You may have seen it before when there was that Hell Knight Imp ambush. This area is not really any threat at all. Especially if you take out the Archvile first. As we move later into Stardate, there's going to be less and less areas which are no threat at all. Keep that in mind when we get to the later maps. This area though, I've never died here, but it feels like one of the hardest fights. I don't know if it's actually that hard, because it seems like I win pretty much every time. I don't think I died here even in practice, but it feels like it's a difficult fight. I believe that if you screw up, you could really destroy yourself pretty quickly with this fight, but I just haven't managed to. There's also the fact that you can do that. It's probably because there's a bunch of enemies in this rather small space, and they're all pretty high health enemies. Might be that. This is probably the hardest arena in the whole map. Actually, it probably isn't. It's probably the second hardest behind the Cyberdemon Mancubus Hell Knight Archvile fight in the L-shaped arena. But my strategy for this fight is to just keep killing Revenants, and when Archviles show up, focus on them exclusively. If you can get all of them to die, then you should be fine. Something unusual happened this time around though. I ran out of rockets. I must have just not been very economical with them in previous fights. I don't know how the Revenant's raising and lowering actually affects the fight. From what I can tell, it doesn't affect the fights. Maybe it's just an aesthetic thing. When you hit this switch, a bunch of enemies teleport in on the opposite side of the arena. They can all be dispatched by just shooting rockets down the center lane. Among them are a couple Archviles. Whenever you see them, target them exclusively, as you always do. And when not much is left that can damage you, use the super shotgun to conserve ammo. Just basic things here. I guess something I can talk about right now is how I'm planning to do Swim with the Whales and Stardate at the same time. Stardate is separated into 7 maps, 8 if you count the secret levels. But the secret levels don't really count as much to me. And Swim with the Whales is separated into 3 maps, plus a 4th if you count the secret levels. But the point is that this means I can do things a very specific way. They're both odd numbers. So, I upload the first map of both right after each other, and then when I get to the 4th map of Stardate 20x6, which I've already recorded. I mean, I haven't recorded the commentary and everything, but I've recorded the demo itself. I'll upload the 4th map of Stardate 20x6 and the 2nd map of Swim with the Whales in tandem, basically right after each other. And then I'll upload Swim with the Whales map 3 and Stardate 20x6 map 7 at the same time. And beyond that, I'll just do the secret levels. If that makes any sense, or if it doesn't, just ask me. I can probably explain in the comments as well, if you don't understand. However, that is about it for this map. I believe this was the 17th attempt. I'm not quite sure, so I can put it in the description. Well, I will put it in the description. According to some people I've talked to, this is the best map of Stardate 20x6. But I don't know because I haven't played the rest yet. So we'll see. Anyways, that's about it, and I'll see you in map 3.